Welcome to Songs of Experience, a Bob Dylan podcast where we explore the man and the music one song at a time. I'm Henry Bernstein, and I'm very pleased to welcome two special guests, Adam Selzer and Robin Haar, here to talk on this emergency podcast about the first three nights of the Outlaw Tour. Hi, gang.
Hey,
Hey,
I am thrilled to be here, Henry.
Great. Well, I
this
have to
is an
say,
emergency.
it's an absolute emergency. Yeah. So I'll say first, obviously, I want to have both of you on this podcast properly to talk about a song,
Oh, of
but
course.
as a part of the Bob Dylan live experience, I had to just speak to you both. So we'll save your Bob Dylan origin stories for when I have
Right.
you on properly, but I can vouch for both of you as having amazing Bob Dylan pedigrees and both have had the honor and privilege of seeing Bob Dylan with me. So and at the same show too, at the Beacon.
Yep.
Anyway, all right, so let's get right into it. You were both at the Outlaw Tour. Robin, I want to start with you. Which shows so far from the old Outlaw Tour have you been to, and how did it come about that you made it to those?
Well, I've been to the three that have been held so far. So that's Alpharetta, Charlotte, and Raleigh. And how did that happen? Oh, originally, when the Outlaw Tour was announced, I bought a ticket for the one closest to me here where I live in DC, and that was Raleigh. But I didn't have any particular interest in, gorging on these because I had no idea what to expect. And then when it dropped relatively recently, that a 75-minute period of time was being set aside for Bob's set, I thought, okay, this is something I'm going to want to see. So I decided, I just grouped it in an efficient way, one trip in 3 days, one trip, and that's how I got there.
Perfect. As of right now, do you have any other plans for the rest of the tour through September, or that's it?
My hometown is St. Louis, and the show is there on September 8th, which
That's
is
right.
2 days after my birthday. And so I'm going to go there, and I'm attempting to recruit my girlfriend cabal to make it to St. Louis and possibly even onward to Cincinnati. But we'll see what happens.
Great. Well, I'll
And I
see you
have
in.
dreams about the Northeast because there's so many.
Yeah, there are a lot. Well, I'll meet you in St. Louis. I'll see you there. All right, Adam, same question.
All right. Well, when this was announced, most of the first shows that I saw were in the Atlanta area. I did high school and college around there. So I'd never heard of this amphitheater in Alpharetta. I knew Alpharetta it's one of those, like most Atlanta suburbs, it's like a subdivision in strip mall town. This was not going to be the trip that you go on. It's like, oh, cool, new city, haven't been there before. These amphitheaters are all in these far-flung suburbs of suburbs. But word was from the start that they were going to be mixing up the set list. When I first heard like 6 months ago was that Bob was going to be touring with Willie, but they wanted him to do the hits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a thing where there's only so many shows where you don't have any idea what he's going to do.
Right.
Like, even in the days when the set list changed around a lot, you could usually assume, you could guess what most of the songs would be. You could guess there might be like one from the once a year rotation. There was a surprise now and then, but you knew about what the show was going to be like. And this, we had no idea. Like, words about the band shakeups had gotten through, and I just can't resist a show like that. So I got a ticket for Tinley Park way later in the tour, but I just wanted to be at the opener. I just got a lawn seat because everything was way too expensive, and just decided to make a one-day trip of it. But then that first night was so weird that, well, Robin had already offered me a ride to Charlotte, but I said, I have to work the next day. I have to fly back so I can get to work. And then it was only the next morning, I'm like driving through the suburbs of Atlanta looking for another Waffle House when it occurred to me, wait a minute, this is Saturday. I don't work until Monday. Like, I had no sense of time. I realized suddenly I could go to Charlotte and then still make it back in time for work. So I'm like immediately getting on tour, like, Robin, have you left yet? And made it to the Charlotte show too. And that one, I think from Willie not being able to be there, tickets had gotten way cheaper. And then right after Plantin Kraus played, Robin came up and said there were a bunch of empty seats around her, so maybe I could try sneaking up. I've gotten pretty good
That's
at
on night
sneaking.
2 that happened?
That is night 2, yeah. So
Mhm.
night 2, I went from being in the lawn where you really couldn't see a thing, up to second row center,
Wow.
and
Oh,
fantastic.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I can just give
Thanks,
a
Robin.
plug. Yeah, thank you, Robin. If I can just give a plug, Adam had a great report um of the tour so far on Ray Padgett's Substack, Flagging Down the Double E's. Please check that out. And there's lots of audio and video there. And also subscribe, because it's if you're a Bob Dylan fan, it's just an amazing wealth of joy. So speaking of audio video, let's talk about the camera thing. When last we all saw Bob in April of this year, there was not a phone in sight. You couldn't take your phone. The phones were in the yonder pouches. That was it. What was the experience like of the phone freedom? Because I'll speak for myself, but I think we've all spoken about this on side conversations, that by the end, with the Yonder pouches, the experience of it being a phone-free show was actually quite liberating and beautiful, like just sort
Yeah.
of being in the moment. So what was it like having the phones available now to record whatever you wanted?
It
Robin,
was such an opposite experience, because it went from being really on lockdown to just being such a free for all.
Did it feel weird at first, like
Yeah,
pulling your
when I
phone
had
out?
my phone out, the security guard was 2 feet away from me, and just in like a private link, I had a Zoom up so some friends could hear what was going on in
Thank
real
you for that.
time in Alpharetta. And like the guy was, looked right at me and didn't say a thing, just looked at the people next to me. He's like, "Hey, were you guys at Dave Matthews too?" And yeah, just people just chatting all the way through. It was a very casual atmosphere. It could not be more opposite from Rough and Rowdy Ways tour
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Uh-huh. Robin, did you have a similar experience in that?
Yeah, it was so unlike Rough and Rowdy Ways that there wasn't even a sense of, oh, this is strange. I've got my phone. What is this thing here? And I just immediately fell right into well, I've got to text Laura, and I got to loop in Aaron
Yeah.
on this, and let everybody know what's happening in the moment, because it's just so fucking exciting. And it's just white bread to rye bread or whatever. It's just a completely different sort of deal all the way through. um eh, from the rules to the whole ambience of the venue, and who
Mhm.
else is around you, and what you can hear. um I was up close, so I had just as good a view of Bob as I had when I had the good seats that I had sprung for back in Rough and Rowdy Ways.
Mhm.
um uh, but nevertheless, the sound was quite different,
Mm.
and the set lists were quite different. I actually did not hear any Bob Dylan shows in my life prior to Rough and Rowdy Ways shows.
Oh, okay.
So this was a completely different thing, more akin to my usual 70s singers, songwriters with, another 20,000 people, in the crowd with me,
Right.
than it was to any prior Bob Dylan experiences.
So two things on that. So number one, that means that every song that first night were songs that you heard for the first time live, correct?
Except for I'll Be Your Baby Tonight.
Oh,
On live
no, that
on
was
night
night
one.
two. That was night
Yeah, that was
one.
night two. Yeah,
So
correct. Night one. That's right.
so that brings me to my next question for both of you, and Adam, maybe you can speak on this. That the could you speak about the just sort of the feeling of the anticipation right before he was going to play, like what is going to that moment where it's like it's about to happen and you don't know, and then what it was like once he went into My Babe by Little Walter.
Right. Yeah, the anticipation for me started really weeks in advance, but of course, in the last like couple of days, like it's only 48 hours, we're gonna know what this tour is.
Mhm.
24 hours, we're gonna know what this tour is. And
Mhm.
then as it started, I was just on this uncomfortable spot on the lawn. Luckily, I had found some shade, about as close up as I could get, and just like trying to reposition myself so my ass didn't hurt so much. Um,
Did
which it
Bob have a video screen up of him?
He did, but it's just a
Oh,
static wide angle shot.
okay,
So
okay,
you
okay,
couldn't. It didn't really help that much.
okay.
Whereas everybody else, like Plant and Krause, had close-ups all throughout, like you'd expect. But Bob just kept. And then the second night, I could see there's like a big monitor on the stage, so he could see what the screen was showing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. It probably was more
So,
for like Plant and Krause.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he just wanted to make sure they weren't showing the whole thing, I guess.
Right.
Weren't showing all the close-ups or anything.
Right.
Yeah, the anticipation was huge. You went into My Babe. I wasn't sure right off. The sound was not very good up, especially if they hadn't really mixed the vocals up yet. So I couldn't tell quite what it was. I was pretty sure it was a cover, but luckily I had the chat up, and people were able to figure out that it was My Babe, by Little Walter. And I just didn't feel bad about having the chat up, even though I'd gotten used to not having phones at all. But I couldn't really see much anyway.
Right.
So why not be? Why everybody else around me was just saying, "You can't understand him, can you?" And
So there was a lot of that.
Yeah, there was a lot. It was a Willie crowd there.
Okay.
It was very much a Willie Nelson crowd. And
okay. Were people around there disappointed that Willie didn't play, or is it just kind of like he's in his 90s? We get it.
That's like the woman in front of me was like informed of it around the time Page and Plant and Krause were finishing up. He said, "Well, if I were 91 and I didn't feel like it," and people seemed just very casual about it. Lucas Nelson, his son, did a great job filling in.
He's great.
He can sound exactly like him when he wants to, but then his own songs were highlights of the night both times. Great. So major shout out to Lucas Nelson here.
Great. And Susan Tedeschi played with them also?
Yeah, and Derek Trucks came out too.
Wow, amazing.
They both, at least in Alpharetta they did.
Both with unbelievable Bob Dylan connections of supporting him very live.
Yeah.
In Derek's case, when he was 14 years old, and in Susan's case, when she was complete unknown, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so then once the set list starts rolling, Adam, and could you recognize Beyond Here Lies Nothing, Simple Twist?
That one I did. That one, Beyond Here, opened up almost like Rough and Rowdy style, just like a slow piano thing first. But I figured that one out right away. And Simple Twist, I knew from the guitar licks. So like, Simple Twist. I was just thinking that Milwaukee show might have been the last. That one off in Milwaukee at the beginning of Rough and Rowdy Ways might have been the last time for that one. So yeah, I did recognize him right away, but by the second or third song in, it was kind of like, what is happening here? Beyond Here Lies Nothing, and then especially when he started in on the other covers, it was like we've discussed. You have Dylan dreams sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. I had one the night before the tour. Yeah,
right. I have these dreams where I'm at a show and like Megadeth is over on the next stage or something, playing at the same time, and for some reason in the dream I can't figure out which one to go to, and Bob is doing something completely bizarre and I can't figure it out. This felt like one of those dreams. As it was a whole sense of what in the hell is happening on stage right now.
Right.
Well, I want to get in just briefly. There have been all these, if you're the sort who believes in omens. And when I was a kid, I read a book called The Secret Language of the SB, which is about a kid who always notices when something's a little bit off in the world and takes it as a sign that something big is going to happen. Like if he gets the wrong kind of, like one of them is he decides to eat Raisin Bran, which he hasn't eaten ever since somebody told him looked like the stuff on the top of the fish tank. And that was me.
Was the dream your omen?
No, well, there were many really. Okay. When I got to the airport, they moved my gate to A11, the title of a song that Bob used to cover. I'm like, oh, that's amusing. And then as I got on the plane, I got this weird craving for Diet Coke. I have never ordered a Diet Coke in my whole entire life. But then suddenly, like, it just seemed like if one is prone to believe in such things, and I am not, but it seemed like all of the strange augurs were there, strange auguries, that something weird was going to happen tonight. And then about 5 songs in, like, something weird is happening.
Well, let's talk about that 5 songs in. So after Simple Twist of Fate I'm just going to rattle through them first, and then we'll kind of pick up. So we got Little Queenie by Chuck Berry, Mr. Blue by Dwayne Blackwell. I don't remember the last time he's gone back to back with covers. Pain Blood, Cold Cold Heart.
Indianapolis.
Oh, there you go. Cold Heart, a Hank Williams song. And then Early Roman Kings, which you brought back from 2019. Under the Red Sky, first time since 2013, I believe.
Yeah.
The Fool by Naomi Ford and Lee Hazelwood. Scarlet Town, Long and Wasted Years, which is an odd place to end. So
Yeah, I think he used to end with Long and Wasted Years for a while,
there
in
was a
like
brief, yeah,
16 or so.
there was, yeah, I think like 2013, 14, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Robin, having, I rattled those off, but what was your experience hearing all of those for the first time? And, did you recognize all the covers? Did you recognize all the pop songs,
I recognized Cold, Cold Heart. I
Okay.
did not even recognize Little Queenie as a Chuck Berry song because I had been in St. Louis when he played two Chuck Berry songs and he was just hot as blazes that night. Everybody was duck walking in the aisles and in their seats. And I did not feel a drop of Chuck Berry rock and roll energy when he played Little Queenie the first night. And in
Wow.
fact, all of the songs just uh, seem to run together
Hmm.
in a sort of undifferentiated mass that for me is like, okay, well, I recognize, Beyond Her Lies Nothing. I my two least favorite songs on Tempest are Scarlet Town and Pay and Blood. And so I was thinking, really, Bob, what are you doing here? I mean, it was, yeah, I mean, I've learned with Bob. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed. And of course, yes, I
Right.
worship Bob for his Bobness.
Right.
And of course, I want him to do what he does, and I'll adapt. But it was a challenge on that night. It certainly wasn't what I was looking for. I had no omens. Um, Things have changed. I thought it was kind of funny because I think of that as one of his most widely known songs,
Right.
but not one that is necessarily, most beloved by Dylan people. And
Really?
maybe,
I mean, it was
that's
for a long time, it was ubiquitous with a Bob Dylan show, right? Like every
Right.
night.
It got to be where he played it so many nights in a row.
Yeah, yeah. I
well,
mean,
I
that
guess
was,
that's
it was sort of came after a while before Rough and Rowdies. It was like, it was along there with like Watchtower and Highway 61. It was like he always
Or
played it. I'm not,
Silvio in the late 90s, or
yeah,
Tangled Up in Blue for a while there. It was
right,
just, yeah,
right.
it was the time to go get a cigarette because you've heard it a million times.
Okay,
If
well,
you, if you,
I wanna talk about those two, Robin, those two, not Pay and Blood, but ending the show with Scarlet Town and Long and Wasted Years. So for the folks playing at home, it was very abrupt when we got the note from all y'all of saying, "Nope, that's it." After
yeah,
Long and Wasted Years. So what was that like there? When he did Long Wasted Years, and then did the lights just suddenly came down? Did he just get up? Did he do his bows? Like what happened there?
like
Adam, why don't you tell us?
I couldn't see that well.
Oh,
I knew it
okay.
was over when the music came back up.
Right. Oh, the house music. Okay, Robin,
House music came back
what
up.
about
Yeah.
you when Long and Wasted Years suddenly ended?
I had enjoyed that song and I was getting ready. I thought, okay, this is taking a nice turn. What's coming next? And I was looking forward to my 75 minutes of music, which did not happen. So yeah, the lights went down and I mean, he did take a bow and
That was it.
he was and they were gone.
Wow.
And so it was a very abrupt feeling. Just as abrupt as it was for you all hearing about it, for
Right.
sure.
Right. Right.
So it was like, what was
So
this?
so then, one more question about night one. What was Bob's energy like, and how did the stripped down newish band with, just two noticeable changes play out? And why don't you tell us
I
about?
couldn't tell his demeanor from where I was, but
Okay, how
the
did the
band,
band sound?
especially on the covers, sounded pretty ragged to me.
Hmm.
It sounded like it wasn't really gelling as much,
Like
and
they sort of did, they were like putting it together maybe last minute, maybe they did like a sound check and that was it or
or
something.
something. Yeah, it sounded like it hadn't quite gelled yet.
Hmm.
And well, I should also touch on the Tempest songs. We should really bring this up with all the like four songs from
Yes.
2012. The
Yes.
usual cycle with a classic rock act is you do a new album, you go on tour and play three or four of the songs from it tops. and then you never play them again on the next tour or on the next cycle. For Dylan to bring back Tempest, a song, nobody else is going to bringing back their songs from 2012.
Right, like
And
he made Rough and Rowdy Ways. He made the great
right,
final quote unquote album. Like to go
yeah.
back to the one right before it is so bizarre.
Yeah, and also I remember you and Mike had been like bugging me before I got in, like check the merch booth because we didn't know if this was really still going to be Rough and Rowdy Ways or what. I rode to the hotel from the airport with Ray, and Ray was pretty convinced that it was still going to be just a shorter Rough and Rowdy Ways set, or maybe a couple of classics thrown in. I said we'll maybe get 3 Rough and Rowdy Ways songs. We'll get like I'm betting we'll get False Prophet and Goodbye Jimmy Reed, maybe
That's what
one
I
up.
thought. Yeah, for sure.
And then he was like, no, I bet it's going to be more than that. And so we get there, like the first thing is like, check the merch, see if it's still Rough and Rowdy Ways merch. And then what we see is Tempest Tour
Yes.
2012.
Thank you,
And
Adam, for getting
the
that to
initial
me.
with the songs on it, Pain and Blood, Scarlet Town, Early Roman Kings.
Oh wow, it even tells you what he's gonna play.
Yeah. Well, that's and the joke like immediately afterwards was, oh, they must have found another crate in the warehouse, and Bob said, oh, I better sell those, and decided to
Nope.
play these. But no, it says in very small letters on the back, copyright 2024. And at least one of these dates, Rosemont was never played.
It did not happen.
No, you don't do the United Center and the Rosemont Horizon on the
No,
same.
it's one or the other.
It's one or the other. Rosemont is a Chicago suburb, and furthermore, on these dates, he barely touched Tempest. It wasn't
Right.
called the Tempest Tour at the time. This is all new, and it's got these 3 songs on it that he actually played. Normally, we would assume that Bob doesn't give much input about the merch.
Right.
In this case, it's like, what is he up to?
Right. Well, that's the thing with you know, it's like we just in real time experience the most Bob Dylan thing ever, where he literally does whatever he wants. You cannot figure out why,
Right.
and it's kind of awesome. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of a
that's
cool choice.
what I always tell people is, I love Dylan songs. There's a long list of songs I would like to see him do, but what I most want to see him do is whatever the hell he wants in Devil Take the Hindmost. And that is definitely what we got in Alpharetta. But the shirt, and this is your shirt that you had me pick up for you, Henry.
Thank you,
It's
Adam.
been all over Twitter and all over the British tabloids and everything.
Yeah, go check out. Was it Daily Telegraph?
Well, that was the Daily Mirror had stuff
Daily
today.
Mirror.
I don't know if they ever showed the shirt. I think it was like Stereo Gum or Consequence of Sound or one of those was showing.
Go check that out.
Where I analyzed that he's got these songs. This is a new shirt. It's not a reprint of an old design. There was no Tempest tour in 2012.
Right.
And it's got songs that he actually played. This is, as somebody else pointed out in a reply, this is like the kind of shit that Taylor Swift does. It's this kind of like
it was a surprise song set. Absolutely.
Yeah, but the difference is she puts out these clues and riddles and stuff all the time, but she'll eventually give you the answer key.
Right.
And with this, I bet we never have any idea what was up with that.
No one will bother asking him, and even if they do,
even if they did, he'd give some weird answer.
Yeah. So that as you come out of night 1 and you're moving into night 2, the sort of monkey of what is he going to play is off your back. Heading into night 2, did you have any expectations that, okay, this is the set, or everything's going to be completely different, or it's going to be a mix, or were expectations just thrown out the window, Robin?
No expectations at all. I hoped that night 2 would be as unexpected in its way as night 1 was, and indeed that turned out to be the case. And night 2 was perhaps the most exciting of the 3 nights for that reason, because for me, as a novice in the world of hearing Dylan play the songs that some of which I know and love best, would be a new experience. And I did not expect there to be any Rough and Rowdy Ways songs in this tour, because I just felt he'd played them a lot. And
do you feel like he feels like he completed his Rough and Rowdy Ways mission and now he's moving on? Like, he did it. It was 2021 to 2024. It was amazing. And now he's moving
out
on.
of that era.
Yeah, that's what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I also felt that he had a blast at Farm Aid last fall and decided that maybe he wanted to do some more of that.
Mhm.
I mean, that was really my thought after the Farm Aid set was he is having so much fun up there. You know, I think it's rekindled something, and I was not surprised. I mean, shocked but not surprised, I guess, that he signed on with the Outlaw Music Festival,
Mhm.
and I expected him. I had no specific expectations, but Rough and Rowdy were not among them. I don't think of him as doing a crowd pleasing kind of act because it's so antithetical to his nature, but maybe that was, you know, part of a
Well,
conversation he had with Willie or somebody.
maybe. I mean, that next night, I mean, talk about crowd pleasing greatest hits. Adam, as you mentioned, speculating on
Still
the
not
great,
that many, but
not that many, but
yeah.
opening with Highway 61 Revisited, like that's not something he's done probably since the 90s, like opening with Highway 61. Like that's usually later in the set or ending,
Yeah, it was a very common song in the set.
oh, it's one of his
Throughout the
most played
2010s. Yeah,
songs. Yeah.
throughout the 2010s, it was very common up
Yeah.
right till 2019
Yeah, it was always like, number
when you need a good up tempo
14.
song.
Yeah, right. After like a Nettie Moore or something, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so was that exciting to hear it? I mean,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
you, Robin, it was
yeah.
your first time hearing it. For Adam, for you, it was your billionth time hearing it, but not in a long time.
But not in a long time. It would have been welcome in any case, but also it means this is different.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Uh-huh.
I had expected maybe a couple of the covers would be swapped out or something.
Uh-huh.
That was well, you don't want to get your hopes up. Just go in expecting
Right.
him to do what he does. The
Right.
best thing to do is expect he'll do exactly the same as last night. So I thought they'll probably switch up a couple of those covers and maybe let's go to a little bit. We were all like looking for signs. We were looking for clues with a shirt and everything. And let's talk about Plant and Krause for a second. Robert
Okay.
Plant sounds just like he did in the 70s. It was amazing to watch.
Wow.
And I just respect the hell out of the fact that we all know that guy could be making eight figures doing a Led Zeppelin reunion tour right
He will
now.
not do, he just won't do
And
it.
no,
Yeah.
no, he'd rather be third billed behind Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson going out playing like medleys of Matty Grove and Gallows Pole.
I mean, talk about, like sort of putting an era of a career behind. I mean, he's sort of the
Right.
goat of that, right? Like besides Bob Dylan, like he
Yeah.
will not he that offer has been made to him several times. The money gets
Mhm.
bigger and bigger and bigger, and with the one exception of honoring
These
Ahmet
occasional
Ercan
one-offs or
at
something.
the
Yeah.
yeah, well he did the O2 to honor Ahmet Ercan. Other than that, will not do it. So and
Yeah.
I love those albums, those Robert Plant, Alison Krauss albums. Those are amazing.
Yeah, and and I love the Led Zeppelin albums, and I just last saw Robert Plant when he toured with Page again in '98. The second tour where they were doing a whole lot of love and going to California and a lot of the classics, and he'd just rather do this. And when he talks about Led Zeppelin, he talks about what happened to me in the '70s,
Hmm.
which I think is just a fascinating way to look at it. And
Hmm.
but still, I loved hearing the new Battle of Evermore, and with that and Matty Groves, that's like two songs associated with Sandy Denny.
Hmm.
And it was great. He was very fun on stage too, self-deprecating, saying, "I've never seen so many people before in one place."
Oh, he
Like, come
said
on,
that?
yeah,
Robert Plant said
yeah.
that?
He said that, and before I think Battle of Evermore, he said, "Well, here's another song from the '60s or early '70s. I don't know, one of those. It must have been fun back then."
It's almost like he's a different person. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
he does kind of seem to look back on those days as a whole other person,
Other than pay other than Tedeschi Trucks playing with Lucas Nelson, were there any other
No, nobody
crossovers with
else came
any
on.
other
No,
big? Okay.
nobody else came on. They kind of made it sound like there were going to be more special guests, and
Mhm.
I could have imagined like Robert Plant going on and doing "You Were Always on My Mind," and that would have been killer. But
Mhm.
Lucas just held down the fort himself, and
Mhm.
admirably so.
Mhm.
But Plant and Krause were a lot of fun to see. They were just mesmerizing. Their music
Mhm.
was great.
Mhm.
I have such respect for Robert Plant for just insisting on continuing to do his own thing, even though he
Mhm.
is leaving a ton of money on the table.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Um, Robin, what was it like hearing Highway
Oh,
61, Shooting Star, and Lovesick all in a row for the first time.
Oh, mind blowing. I mean, Highway 61, just because it was a clear announcement tonight is not like last night.
Hmm.
mm,
And, I was all in for that announcement. And Shooting Star, it just happens to be a song I massively adore. And so, and it's not like Highway 61 where you think, okay, he's just going to pick a favorite and do it. No, this is
No,
a
it's a
specific,
special
yeah,
one. It's a
that's
deep cut.
yeah.
yeah.
Like even
So,
it had been played about 10 years ago, but even then it was like part of the once a year
It was
rotation.
a rarity. Yeah, I think I heard
Yeah.
it once, maybe twice, but I
I
definitely heard
think
it
I heard it
once.
like once in '05 or something.
And then,
that was
Robin,
going
your
to give
your
it.
first Lovesick. The last time we saw Lovesick was in a botched attempt in Chicago, in 2021. Adam, do you remember that at the Auditorium Theater when he scrapped
Yeah.
Lovesick, and that was it? We hadn't seen
Yeah,
it since.
he did Lovesick. It was, the first two nights of the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour, he did
He,
Lovesick,
he
but the
tried a
second
new
night in
arrangement,
Chicago,
didn't work,
he
and it was
botched
gone.
it and just kind of gave up after that. It was
Yeah.
the next night that he brought in Every Grain of Sand. He dropped "It Takes a Train to Cry." He'd already dropped "Simple Twist" and
And soon after midnight, maybe.
"Sooner After Midnight," both of which came back now.
Right. So Robin, how was that hearing Lovesick? And what was the arrangement like? Was it closer to the album, or if you remember?
Pretty close to how it would sound live. Not a huge radical rearrangement.
Mm, great.
Yeah, I either now Fragments is mixed in my mind with the original. Um,
Right.
but yeah,
No pun
it
intended on Fragments talking about a Time Out of Mind song. But um, so Little Queenie, Mr. Blue, Early Roman Kings,
oh,
those were, those were repeats of the night before. But then Adam, I wanted to ask you, because I was getting the texts from you in real time on multiple platforms. Can't Wait, basically solo piano. So will you just tell us about that?
Ah, I
What
want
was
to
it
I
like?
want
What did it remind you of? What?
I want to circle back briefly. One thing about Page and Plant and Krause that I forgot to mention was they played an extra song in the encore slot, which had me think. Those of you looking for clues, their set was a little bit longer tonight. So one of those things that get you primed up. That, but could also mean nothing.
Because Bob's
And
was one
yeah,
extra song. What, more than the
well,
night
Bob
before?
did. It ended up being like one song longer. It
Yeah.
felt like more of a complete set for sure.
Mm,
But
mm.
yeah, well, first of all, harp came out on Early Roman Kings. I don't recall that being a regular thing before.
No,
He'd already
definitely not.
he didn't play harp at all night one, and apparently I heard that he kind of fiddled with it at one point, but never touched it. I couldn't see that. I was too far back. But then he'd already brought out the harp on Shooting Star.
Amazing, by the way. That's
Yeah,
what a treat for all of you. I'm so jealous and
and
happy for you.
just watching, even just knowing Shooting Star. All
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
this is something. But yeah, then when he got to, and I'm such a time out of mind guy. I've
Yes.
gone through. I spent a couple of days just like listening to all the bootlegs of every time I ever saw a Time Out of Mind song live. And I was at like the fourth version of Can't Wait in '97, and
Is like the only one you're missing Dirt Road Blues because he's never played it.
I haven't seen. I didn't catch Highlands.
You never caught Highlands.
I
Okay.
did. I think I did see everything else off of there. Everything that's normally in rotation. But yeah, he started that, and he was just playing it on piano with like nothing in the back. It was similar to those Rough and Rowdy arrangements, or back to a year before or so that of like Don't Think Twice. And I was like, I kept thinking that he's good.
Like
Okay,
sort
so
of the way he played
like,
Big River on the Rough and Rowdy Ways
yeah,
tour was
like how he
basically
did Big
solo
River.
piano and maybe a little
Basically
guitar.
solo piano. Like Tony would like not do a bass line, but some bass rumbles, and
just to keep the rhythm.
you'd maybe get the occasional on guitar, but just like a flourish, not a
Wow.
part.
How did he sound singing that? Can't Wait.
He sounded terrific. He sounded great. It was almost like he was just like reciting it a cappella as much as anything else. Like Graylee Heron in a comment on the Substack said it was like being at City Lights Books watching a poetry reading or something. And
like
it was
truly an acoustic performance of it.
yeah. And I kept thinking that this is going to be like I'll Be Your Baby Tonight or To Be Alone With You, where he does a verse or so on piano and then the band kicks in. It kept seeming like they were about to kick in. But then he just went all the way through the entire song like that. And I was just blown away. I was in heaven by it.
Oh my God,
I
Robin,
love that
did
he's
you love
bringing back
that?
Time Out of Mind songs. That's
Oh,
two of them now.
it's great.
And also, you do notice there's kind of a pattern here. He opened with the one song from the '60s, but
Mm-hmm.
since then it had been covers and songs from the '90s and beyond, or
Mm-hmm.
'89, I guess, for Shooting Star.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Robin, what about you for Can't Wait? You know, getting a solo acoustic piano version.
Yeah, it was different. That wasn't what struck me so much about,
Mm,
because night two, I was just so blown away by Bob's energy.
mm.
So,
Mm.
Oh, talk about his
uh,
energy then.
well, Little Queenie, which did not sound like a Chuck Berry song on night one, just blazed on
Wow.
night two. It was
Yeah,
rocking. Bob was happening on night two. He was blowing
Mr.
the
Blue too
hell
was a
out of that
million
harp.
times better.
Okay. Did you catch any
Everything.
smiles to him, from him? Like, did he smirk at all, or
Mm.
after like a good lick or something, or yeah?
I'm terrible at noticing those
Yeah,
looks.
he was grinning quite a bit.
Great. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and
You could just tell.
something I had noticed by then was the night and day difference with the band. They had sounded kind of raggedy and choppy and not together on night one. Night two was like light switch.
Wow. Wow. They were like really gelling as
Yeah,
a
I mean,
band.
well, the band was sounded much tighter, and Dylan had been his vocals have been very good, especially in the second half of night one. But night two, it was just like, bam! All of a sudden, we're back at like Rough and Rowdy Ways caliber show.
Wow. How was Keltner, and the person of Bob's generation back with him?
I couldn't really see him either night.
Uh,
So I saw him walk out on stage. I was glad to get to hear him. I can't really
but the
analyze it.
drums sounded good and
Sounded
interesting.
fun to me.
Yeah. Wow, incredible. Um, Under the Red Sky. I mean, who would have thought of that for either night?
I never would have picked Under the Red Sky anywhere on my bingo card or anywhere on the pool.
And
That's
then
just
after
extremely unlikely. But to point out, there was also a great harp solo on that. And before that, which this I
wow.
don't know if I've ever heard this before, but there was a great Doug Lancio guitar solo.
On Red Sky?
On Red Sky, yeah, he did a
Wow.
great solo, like a solo that was like so perfect to the song. It reminded me of like seeing Freddie Coella,
Uh-huh.
who sometimes he would do these weird science fiction solos, and other times he just did these solos that just captured the mood of the song
Mm-hmm.
perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it sounded like when Doug played this solo. And like Robin, you mentioned this is like the doppelganger Doug who did Shrooms.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, did you
Doug
see
seemed
that one?
pretty reserved. Yeah, go ahead, Robin. I'm sorry.
Doug on night two, and this did not continue so much on night three.
Hmm.
But we're talking about the band being tight on night two, and yet Doug was the groovy guy on stage wearing these very dark shades.
Very bright in there.
His hair
Wow.
looked different. I don't
No
remember
hat?
in what
No hat.
way. No, 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 no hat. Uh, Bob Britt looked exactly like Bob Britt always looked. Um, Doug, I think maybe had a bit more of a beard, but he had gone off to do Maui, picked some shrooms, ate a box full of them, and he was grooving out, babe. He was completely like, Bob, you want me back? You're getting a different dude. This is the kind of dude you're going to get. A dude who does what he feels like
I love
doing.
that.
And I'm with you, Bob, but I'm not in that, you know, stiff man doing the stiff stuff. It's not me anymore.
Right.
And apparently they agreed to that. Although, that shroomy guy didn't last fully into night three. So I
Oh,
don't know,
okay.
where Doug's going to be as he works through his new thing with Bob.
How did that sound without Donnie? I mean, to me, that is a sound that has existed since 2005, pretty much the bulk of seeing Bob live. No pedal steel, no violin, no mandolin, and no, sort of extra
For the most
guitar.
part, I felt like Bob Britt was kind of covering where the steel part would be.
Okay, okay.
If you really love the sound of a steel guitar, you're probably noticing the hole in the band.
Hmm.
I didn't really. The band sounded a little bit more stripped down,
Mm.
but just kind of like a more garage bandy, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
more so the first night.
To me, the sound was sparse, is what I would call it.
Sparse. Okay.
Um,
Okay. So maybe like
throughout the three
there's something
nights.
that there was something that Donnie was filling that maybe it's sort of ineffable, like it's just a sound
Yeah.
that was a part of it. Certainly on like I would imagine I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, like not having the fiddle or mandolin or
Yeah.
anything like that might have felt like there was something missing. But before we get to I'll Be Your Baby, Stella Blue. Now, had either of you seen Stella Blue on the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour when he was playing Grateful Dead songs?
I saw it in Toronto.
You saw it in Toronto. Okay. How did that sound in comparison? Similar, better, worse? I mean,
Not as tender, I mean, this
mm,
gets to the whole sound experience of the 2,000 person indoor theatrical
mm,
Sure.
setup
right,
versus
right.
the
Versus the
big
amphitheater.
crowd and the outdoor venue. I mean, you felt like he was crooning just for you,
Hmm.
so to speak, when it was in Rough and Rowdy Ways.
Hmm.
Lost, I think perhaps Bob was projecting a bit more. And
Mm,
so as his voice got a little louder and this, I'm not great at picking apart the sounds and why they sound exactly, different from one night to the next. But I think Laura said something about this, being a question of Bob, uh, just being louder.
hmm.
And you lost that tender
Hmm.
beauty
Hmm.
quality,
Hmm.
Stella Blue.
Right, right. The sort of
That wasn't there.
delicateness of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Adam, was
But I
that a
don't know. How
first?
did you feel
Was
about it?
Stella? Yeah, was Stella Blue a
That
first for you?
that was a first for me, and really, I didn't know that song that well until Dylan started covering it. And I realized just the other day, going back, I'd seen it in '03 with Joan Osborne singing
Oh,
it
oh,
when they toured with
with
Dylan.
the dead.
I
Oh, yeah.
listened to the tape of that because I went through a thing with that particular song over the last like month or so. There have been a couple of days where I just listened to version after version of that,
Hmm.
especially any Dead show that also had Eyes of the World. It says that
Hmm.
sometimes the songs that you hear are just songs of your own. And it
Hmm.
kind of goes back to like Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the spirit builds a house for itself, and beyond that, a world and a universe. And it's a weird night. I'm not going to say I wasn't a little bit high, as I don't indulge much, but I've started taking some edibles to help me sleep through the entire night. And one night I was just even not even listening to the song. I was just thinking about Stella Blue in my bed, and I just became like this overwhelming sense of calm and peace.
Hmm.
Yes, there's bad things, but they're all just building that song that you'll hear crying in the wind to remind you that it's all a dream. Every bit of broken pavement and wasted years are all just building that song that's just a song of your own.
Hmm.
And being a little bit high, that just sounded very deep and profound to me. But yeah, I've been trying to learn the song on guitar. I'm not good at it. And I've been thinking my window of actually seeing Dylan play this song is probably closed.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when he started singing it, I was just overjoyed to be able
Hmm.
to sing that. And certainly it's a different experience just in general seeing a song, any song, in a giant amphitheater versus a small theater.
Right.
But you know what you're getting into when you buy a ticket for a giant amphitheater. You understand that this is not a 2,000 seat theater. You
Hmm.
understand that it's going to be hot as balls outside.
Hmm.
And you're
Um,
surrounded by people who aren't as into this as
right.
you are, etc. But yeah, hearing him do it, and also I was like checking: is he gonna say Blue Light Cheap Hotel or just Cheap Hotels? He's only said like Blue Light once or twice, but
um, eh, Before we get to night three, Robin, the "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight," ending with "Ballad of a Thin Man" and "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight" by starting with Thin Man and then going into "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight," was there more of a feeling like, oh, this is the appropriate ending to the show? Like he played "Ballad of a Thin Man" and now he's playing one more, so that sort of felt like the end, or was it more abrupt like the first night where you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, it felt like it's not the song you end your shows on, Bob. And of course,
So that felt
again,
abrupt
how
to
are you
you?
going to end an amphitheater show is going to be different from how you end with your benediction to your congregation almost in the theater, which felt like everyone to stand was to me.
Right, right.
yeah,
That's a good
But it was
point. Yeah.
fun. it was fun
Huh.
having the one song from Rough and Rowdy Ways, and it was one that I was very attached to, as I was to practically every song in that set list.
Was it the
Uh,
same arrangement as Rough and Ready
Yeah,
Ways? I'll Be Your Baby. Great,
yeah.
more or less.
great. Awesome. Adam, what about you? Did it feel, I'm not trying to lead the witness here, but did it
Right.
feel
Well,
like a
when you
logical
picture
conclusion or?
when you pictured this set, the rumor was it was going to be more greatest hits. So the logical thing would be to end on "Knocking on Heaven's Door," "Rainy Day Women," something like that.
Right, like by the
And
Stones,
"I'll Be
Blowing
Your
in the
Baby
Wind.
Tonight" worked. People were into it. People were excited about it when he started playing it, and it works as well. But "Ballad of a Thin Man" was terrific that night. It was, that was on the cue sheet for Rough and Rowdy Ways the first couple
Mm-hmm.
of nights
Mm-hmm.
as an alternate closer. And it was I think it was, I'd have to go back and listen to some 2019 tapes, but I think it was a slightly different arrangement.
Mm,
It's
mm.
like a false ending section. And the portion you've been through all. Oh, he did this like
F.
long
Scott
staccato.
Fitzgerald.
You've
Yeah.
been through all. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was just biting and fun at the same time.
Great.
And it almost seemed like a rebuke of all the people who'd been there last night and talked all the way through it.
Were the talkers, I mean, at a theater show, it's infuriating because you're like, really? Seriously? You're in a theater and you wouldn't do this if you were coming to see a Broadway show. But
Right.
at the, not so much the lawn, because that's its own thing, but like for both of you in the seats, were the talkers a problem? Did they take away from your enjoyment of seeing Bob, or was it just like, okay, it's part of the thing here?
For the most part on the lawn, it didn't bother me as much. When I try to listen to the tape, I wish I'm like trying to call back the ghost of General Sherman. And, but the people around us weren't really talking. When I was with Robin on night two, we didn't really. I noticed like there was a guy behind us who would go, "Ooh," and like holding up a copy of John Wesley Harding. His name was Nick.
Yeah,
I had a great time. I ended up catching
yeah.
Willie's set list. Um, Fun guy. There's a
Shout
little
out to the
girl,
John Wesley Harding guy.
yeah, a little girl down the road from me. He was like dancing all the way through. Uh,
Great.
I think it was either 6 days, well, it's 6 days or Little Queenie or something. It was just
Hmm.
just dancing and getting it on. People around us seemed to be enjoying it a lot more than they were night one, especially.
Great. Great. Robin, what about night three? Because this is the identical set list, so we don't need to go through that song by song, but just give me an overview, the vibe, were you with similar folks from the previous night, other than Adam? Were you on your own? What was just the whole experience night three?
Yeah. I kind of miss being with Adam. I had people on my left who epitomized what you hate about amphitheater
Oh
shows.
no.
These two guys came up. The first thing out of their mouths was, "You here by yourself?"
Oh
And
no.
I was like,
Hmm.
and by the third time or fourth time somebody said that to me that night, I said, "Why do you want to know?" And
Good for you.
eventually I said, "Don't ask me the fuck who I'm here with. It's none of your fucking business." And this kid who was not a kid, 20s, like, we don't talk to my dad down here like that. But anyway, yeah. So on my left were these guys who got just drunker than hell,
Uh,
spilled wine all over me as
no.
well as
Oh,
themselves, and were just, calling out, screaming for some song that they wanted Bob to do. They didn't seem like they knew Bob at all. So I don't know what song it was they even wanted. I finally said something to him like, by that time he was almost so drunk he was getting weepy, this guy,
Oy vey.
and saying,
uh,
"Just want him to sing my favorite song." And I said, "Yeah, but that's not gonna help. It's
You have to
gonna
teach him a lesson.
And the people near you won't be able to
Right.
so, but then to my right, it's got, the best thing you always, uh, to meet, if you're not going with friends, the
Right.
people you want in your seat next to you were this young man in his early 20s and his mom, from France. I could not figure out who was the original Dylan fan because they were both just having the time of their lives there. The
Mhm.
Oh, great.
guy was uploading a set list in real time to Expecting Rain.
Yes, good. Oh,
And
what a hero. Thank you, Guy.
yeah, and they had been to all three. They came over from France for those three shows, and then
Mhm.
they were heading back. And the mom was just whooping, with joy the whole time. They were just fabulous people to speak with and to sit next to.
That's awesome.
And so, but the show didn't have quite as much heart
Mhm.
as night two. Night two was the harmonica highlight of the first three nights.
Mhm.
And I think he, maybe just blew his pipes out a little bit. Night two, he
Mm.
didn't touch it as much. Night three, um,
But he did play it. He played it on Shooting
oh yeah,
Star,
yeah,
Red
yeah, yeah.
Sky, and Midnight, and Ballad of a Thin Man, which is kind of cool. What was his energy like, Robin, on that third night? Was it, and you said the band was a little more schleppy like the first night, but what was Bob's
I
vibe?
don't know that the band was more schleppy.
Oh,
I don't know.
oh, Doug,
I
you said
didn't
Doug was
notice
like
that.
more tight, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was more tight. He was. I think night two was the emotional highlight for Bob being in it. I think he was just radiating more joy.
Mm-hmm.
6 days on the road was so hot.
Mm-hmm.
Three was great too. And then maybe when I listen back to them later, they will not sound different
Sure.
in the way that I'm describing here. It
Mm-hmm.
may just be that I was so grateful for it
Mm-hmm.
and so astounded to be here in the moment when this was happening on night two that it was my joy popping more than Bob's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
can't
You could be
differentiate
projecting. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
at this moment in time exactly.
Totally. Um, so Robin, you said St. Louis in September is up next for you. Adam, is Tinley Park. I'm not going to say Chicago because Ray
Right. Tinley
already
Park is
lectured
not
me. It's
Chicago.
not Chicago. It takes so long to get there. It's such a pain
Uh,
in the ass. Um, but so is that your next one?
far as I know, if the set starts mixing up again, I might get tempted.
Right. I know that
But I
one of
feel
your
like, well, what I feel like in hindsight, for the most part, is there were a couple times in the '90s, like Toad's Place and the Edge in Fort Lauderdale '95, where you do like a public rehearsal in a club. And people would come in, people could come in and tape it. So, but it would just be a rehearsal with a lot of covers. Like Toad's
Mhm.
Place, famously "Dancing in the Dark," and Fort Lauderdale was doing like "Willin'," I think "Keys to the Highway" or something like
I mean,
that.
that was like a 4-hour show. He did like a Bruce
Yeah, well, the
Springsteen kind
Toad's
of
Place
thing.
was like a 4-hour show. Fort Lauderdale was just like a regular length show with no
Right.
harmonica.
Right.
And looking back now, like there was a couple of people that I talked to, like Ray thought it was the best comparison. Like it was like being at Toad's Place night one.
Mm-hmm.
And looking back now, I generally feel like that what we saw, one of those public rehearsals, only he was perverse enough to do it in front of 20,000 people at an amphitheater crowd who had not been told that this was a public rehearsal. But that doesn't explain the shirts.
The Tempest shirt. Right. Right.
It doesn't explain the songs on the shirts.
Right. Right. Wow.
Is he
Amazing.
circling back to do an album tour now that he's finished his album tour of his more recent album? Is he doing the Tempest tour that never was?
Well, what I
Maybe.
feel like is if the Sinatra albums hadn't happened, this is a very good a good like
Mm.
alternate reality version of what a 2015 or 2016 show would have been.
Right.
During the
Right.
period when he was doing the Sinatra covers, these were Shooting Star would have been a random one, but we'd already had like What Good Am I in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
These are exactly what the set might have been in 2015 or 16 if there hadn't been a Sinatra album. If he had done like an album of 50s and 60s covers instead,
Mm-hmm.
it might be this might be like circling back, pretending the last decade of Dylan stuff didn't happen.
Right.
Let's now before we were so rudely interrupted by my great inspiration. My my initial thought was he's realized, hey, I'm singing a lot better right now than I was back in 2012. maybe he's gone back and re-recorded the vocals for Tempest.
Oh my God,
And
he
we're about
really
to
is
get
like
and
Taylor
we're about to
Swift.
get Tempest Bob's version.
Bob's version. Yeah, I was thinking, and I, I'm gonna go with this because Adam, you brought up Taylor Swift and not me this time, so I feel like it's not my fault. But I was thinking, I said to someone that perhaps it's sort of like Taylor didn't get to do the Lover tour because of the pandemic, and then from
Right.
that we got Evermore, Folklore, and Evermore, and then on the Eras tour she's doing it all. So
Yeah.
perhaps this is like that he didn't do a proper Tempest tour because of the Sinatra stuff, and then of course the pandemic interrupted everything, which
Right.
gave us a Rough and Rowdy
Well,
Ways.
yeah, I got that's something I thought about occasionally.
The sliding doors
I
of,
don't like to say
Bob
good
there.
yeah, I don't like to say good things happened out of the pandemic. And we find ways to make the best of things, of course.
Right,
But
of course.
he was scheduled to do like a summer stadium tour.
Right.
So that would have been if that could have been like Rough and Rowdy Ways. I think Rough and Rowdy Ways was supposed to come out in the fall. They pushed it back a little bit.
Mm.
But I think, if he had just done a summer stadium tour with like Goodbye Jimmy Reed live, there wouldn't have been this same tour with eight or nine songs from the new album every night.
Right. I
So
agree.
maybe there would have been, maybe there wouldn't have been, but I feel like things got, something's out of whack.
Right. Totally. Oh, amazing. Anything else you guys want to share about the weekend, this crazy weekend?
I
And
feel
it's
like
okay. We've said a lot.
I feel like there's so much. Pay and Blood coming back. I feel like Pay and Blood is almost like a notable absence from the Rough and Rowdy ones. So when it goes back to, I think like the beginning of Rough and Rowdy Ways era is 2018 or 2019. I look back at like my review of the Beacon show in 2018. Like there's a real Julius Caesar thing starting to show up.
What
And
do you
like
mean by that?
there were all these lines like me the
Oh.
hungry look line being written into When I Pay My Masterpiece, Pay in Blood with came to bury not to praise, and continuing on with the assassination thing, like bringing back Lenny Bruce of all things.
Yes.
And Lenny Bruce was not assassinated, but in the song he mentions the ones who killed him.
Right.
And like going back to like only a pawn in their game, he always kind of sees assassination in like a broad macro sense. You want to like in philosophy of modern song, you want to see a war criminal look in the mirror, which I didn't think was as profound as some people did. It just reminded me of the stuff Marilyn Manson was saying after Columbine. But it's not so much conspiracy as just the macro sense. And there were all of these themes of Julius Caesar and assassinations were all over in Rough and Rowdy Ways. So really, like Pay in Blood with that line, I came to bury, not to praise, seemed like the notable absence from the Rough and Rowdy Ways tour.
Wow. Amazing. Robin, any last final thoughts? I mean, obviously we can go on and on.
I'm just still contemplating Tempest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the T-shirt suggests that I mean, it may suggest only that those three songs matter to him, but I'm
He did another one the
thinking
next
that
night.
yeah, early Roman Kings. Of course, he did play for a while on Rough and Rowdy Ways
First leg,
as
yeah.
well. But I'm just thinking he shifted the Tempest songs from night one to night two, and I'm hoping Duquesne Whistle comes and Narrow Way.
Tempest. I
Ways
gotta give it up
overdue.
for Michael Glover Smith. We gotta hear Tempest live. Bring Roland
I
John
would
back.
say not on
Finally
the best
play
day of
Tin
your
Angel.
life will you hear Tempest live, but it's you never say never. I would have said the same thing about you would. There was a time when, like in 2000, when we had like this great set list explosion in fall of 2000 when all these surprises were coming up. And I remember there was even an anecdote. Somebody told me maybe he'll even play my favorite, If Dogs Run Free. And the person next to him said, not on the best day of your life if you lived to be a million years. Then the next night, If Dogs Run Free is the set list. And
unbelievable.
I would have never guessed Highlands would ever be played live, and then it was.
So,
and never say never. It can seem like this all happens in slow motion. It can seem like it's the same thing night after night after night after night after night. And if every show was weird, then no show would be weird. So, but when something like this happens, it just seems like so seismic when it does.
Right. Right. Totally.
And yeah, I'm so glad that I made it to both of those two shows. Thanks again for the ride, Robin. That was incredible.
Oh, I
I'm so
needed
glad that you
my
didn't put it out
DJ
there.
and navigator. I
Yeah,
would have
and
not enjoyed that ride without you, Adam.
so
It
yeah,
was great.
it was a very last minute thing, but I love these adventures
Yeah. I mean,
and
that's what
realized
it's all
I've
about.
got frequent flyer miles. I
Yes.
can fly home from Charlotte for $5 if I blow
Nice.
all of my miles. And tickets have gotten so much cheaper. It's like I'm gonna do it. I don't have to work till the next day. And I'm so glad. If it had been the same set again, I would have been, well, I tried. And it's like buying a
Right.
lottery ticket sometimes. But if I had gone to Raleigh too and like risked, not making it back in time for work today, and then and it was just the same sets.
Right. Right. So
But
you
at the
you
same
left it on
time,
a high note.
I
Yeah.
only regret the shows that I didn't make it to in
Right.
general.
Right. That's the way
So
it is with Bob. Exactly.
that's the way
Yeah.
it is. This number of things that I missed by one show over the years.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
FOMO, I don't know why there's this like, don't let FOMO rule your life stuff. No, FOMO is what motivates us to go out and do great
To
things.
go out and see
You
Bob.
know, to go out and see Bob again. So
Yeah.
rumors are piling up about a Euro tour in the fall or a UK tour. Henry, you
I heard
going?
winter. I heard winter.
Winter,
It's
even
on.
better. I'm not
I mean,
working I don't do anything in winter.
I mean, if it's yeah. I mean, I will say on my bucket list, my Bob bucket list, were two things: see him at the Beacon and to see him in Europe. So
Let's go.
no time like the present. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's wrap up here, folks. Because we've been going on a while, which is great. Obviously the tour is continuing. We're going to see each other in September in Tinley Park and in St.
Yep.
Louis. We may
I got to bring you your shirt before then too,
Yeah,
man.
for sure. Well, we'll see each other at some point. But until then, there's going to be a lot of Bob chatter going on. It's already the last few days have been great. It feels like it's 2020
It's been
again.
so much fun. Yeah.
So, Robin, where can folks find you if they want to talk about Bob stuff with you on the Twitter?
Yeah. Uh, my handle on Twitter is Edison RJ.
Amazing.
EDISONRJ, and or just look me up. I don't think there's too many Robin Haars, spelled Haar. I'm not. I'm more of a social media lurker than a poster, so I don't have
Perfect.
websites and things like that.
No, I just
But
meant where people can talk about Bob with you. And Adam, where can folks find you if you want to plug, where all of your Adam things, please.
Just my name, Adam Selzer, Instagram. I'm trying to do more with. I get more engagement on Threads for the most part, except when I'm talking about Dylan. Then it's the Twitter, Adam Selzer.
I know we're all trapped here. I talked about this.
Yeah,
with
we're all kind of
Roberta
stuck
recently.
on Twitter. But the best picture I got where Bob looks like he's DJing or something has got like 700 likes or something. And the picture of Nick holding up his copy of John Wesley Harding,
Yeah.
right after "I'll Be Your Baby Tonight," just like seeming just totally blissed. Yeah, I just love that picture.
So that's
Uh,
at Adam
there's a
Selzer, right?
Yeah, just add Adam Selzer. There was one of Jim Keltner, the all new Doug Lancio, and Bob just walking in, shirt unbuttoned, looking like, all right.
Yeah, he did.
And
Bob did look like a badass. Yeah,
he just looked like a badass there. Like, all right, let's go do this.
amazing. Great.
And it was so weird having a camera out, though. I kept worrying, oh, God, he's going to see me with the camera.
By the way, were cameras allowed? Like
I'm not sure.
cameras? Okay. Be one thing to look into, right?
It might be one thing to look into. I mean, Duncan would have the easiest time in the world.
Right. Yeah. Duncan got some great shots. All right, folks. This was amazing. We'll see you on down the road. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Henry.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to my guests, Adam Selzer and Robin Haar. Please look for the next episode on the first day of the following month, found in all of your podcast feeds. Give us a follow on Twitter at Songs of Bob. If you're subscribing on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to give us a rating and review so the word gets spread. If you'd like to see a video version of this podcast, please visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@songsofbobdylan. And you can email us at songsofbobdylan@gmail.com. Lastly, Thank you to my friend and hero Rob Kelly for designing our fabulous logo, and thank you to Mark Mitchell from the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago for teaching me how to play the intro and the outro. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you next time.